concupiscence because she was free of original sin. So as a result, it was easier, but it was all because she stayed faithful to the grace God gave her. She couldn't do it on her own will. Okay? I think that that's important to emphasize.
So there's text, but it does offer biblical support, noting that Mary already has this life of grace within her. Now, some people may wonder about this dogma. Why is Mary conceived full of grace? Why do you have to believe that? Is this in any way taking away from Christ's great work of salvation? That doesn't Mary need to be saved like the rest of us? Well, Mary does need salvation, but she receives this great gift in anticipation. It's like this. My wife's nephew once had a big accident in the laundry machine. His mom was down in the laundry room and was unloading the laundry, putting clothes into the washer, taking clothes out on the dryer. She has the son on top of the dryer, and he's looking over at the washer. And when the mother turned around, suddenly she turned back and noticed that the little boy had fallen into the washing machine. She saw his legs swishing back and forth into the air. Now, if she had turned around 1 second earlier, she could have before he fell into the washing machine. But instead, she could pull him out after he fell into the laundry machine. Now, in either case, the mother here would be saving the child, whether she pulled him out afterwards or caught him before he fell in. What we see here are two different ways salvation can be worked out, two different ways someone can be saved. Most of us, the rest of us, are saved after we've fallen into sin. We enter this world with original sin, and we need to be rescued. Mary, however, was saved before she fell in. Mary was saved in anticipation. God gave her the fullness of grace in the moment of her conception. So she's completely dependent on God, just as the rest of us are. It's just that she received salvation at the moment of her conception. But why would God do this? Why would God make Mary conceived full of grace? This isn't for Mary's sake alone, no. This great gift is given to Mary for her particular role of being the mother of the Son of God. It's fitting that if Mary is going to be the mother, not of any ordinary child, but the Holy Son of God himself, it's fitting that she would be conceived full of grace, to be a holy temple, a holy vessel to house the Holy Son of God. So picture those beautiful words spoken to Mary some 2,000 years ago. Hail, full of grace, being spoken right here in Nazareth, within these very walls.
Yeah, he was there. He filmed this in Nazareth, so it just gives that added thing, that added oomph to see where it goes. I'm looking at the time. I want to go through some of this a little bit more quickly. This is related to our Christmas, deconstructed Christmas. I'm going to go through this maybe a little bit quickly, just because we've gotten the main idea of the Immaculate Conception. I think we've answered the objections, we've gone over the scriptures, we've gotten this idea. If Mary was indeed conceived without original sin, does that mean that she did not have any labor pains when she gave birth to Jesus? This is kind of a direct link to this. The argument goes like this. Since she was conceived, she was not under the curse of Adam. Remember, back in Genesis, God said, you will bear children in pain. Therefore, since she wasn't under that sin, she didn't experience the pains of childbirth. Well, here are some of the favorable arguments, and I must say that they're very convincing. St. Augustine said in his Sermon on the Nativity, in conceiving, thou wast all pure. In giving birth, thou was without pain. So that's pretty good. Well, let's take it one step further. Let's go to Thomas Aquinas. Can't get any brighter than Thomas Aquinas. He said, Christ came forth from the closed womb of his mother, and consequently, without opening the passage. Consequently, there was no pain in that birth, neither was there any corruption. On the contrary, there was much joy therein, for the God-man was born into the world. So St. Thomas believed that there was no pain in her birth because of this reason. The Catechism of the Council of Trent, probably the greatest church council we've had in history. On the creed says, to Eve it was said, in sorrow thou shalt bring forth children. Mary was exempt from this law. For preserving her virginal integrity inviolate, she brought forth Jesus the Son of God without experiencing, as we've already said, any sense of pain. Well, it seems like the church is pretty clear on this, right? Mary gave birth without any pain because she was immaculately conceived and not under the curse of sin. Well, that's a good point. But here's some contrary thoughts. Jesus was born without sin, right? Yet he experienced pain and death, didn't he? Those are the consequences of sin. So that's kind of a weak argument, if you ask me. Just because you're born without sin doesn't mean you don't experience the consequences of sin. Jesus did. So why wouldn't Mary? The curse of pain and childbearing in Genesis 3:16 says that the Lord would greatly multiply the pain of childbirth. This implies that even before the fall, there was to be some pain in childbearing. The fall just multiplied it, or just increased it. The woman in Revelation chapter 12, you know, I saw a vision of the woman clothed with the sun and all that, who many identify as the Virgin Mary, cries out in pain when about to give birth to the male child. She cries in great agony, it says, to give birth to the male child. That seems kind of not what's going on here. In truth, no one knows, because no one was there except for her and a midwife or two. So no, St. Thomas wasn't there. St. Augustine wasn't there. I would argue St. Joseph wasn't there when Jesus was born. And I'll explain that next week. Who was there? Mary herself and perhaps a relative who was a midwife to help with the birth. My conclusion is she probably had a very easy birth with moderate or low discomfort. But I think that she did experience what most women experience as far as labor and pain, but it wasn't unusual or extraordinary. It was probably what we would call a very easy birth. That's my conclusion of the matter. I don't want to discount what St. Augustine and St. Thomas said, but I also want to be realistic. And I think that when you also look at these other passages, when you get down to it, the truth is no one knows but her. And like I said, the midwives that were there at the time. I think that it was probably a relatively easy birth with minimal discomfort in relationship to other births. But I think she did experience some pain. When we get to heaven, just ask her, Mary, did you have pain? And that's it. That's it. So next week, you'll find out what Christmas is and isn't, what the first Christmas was like. And so may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and grant you peace. Amen.